XRP is the one. But it's not a reserve currency. It's not a world currency. Why? Because it's not a currency. Remember? It's security. It's digital asset collateral. It's the guarantee. It's like being Lloyd's of London. You're giving everybody confidence to go ahead and do the transaction because your system makes sure that everything is on the up and up. XRP bridges the gap from the third dimension into the fifth dimension. And this is where all of the money, our money, is going to reside. If you want to put some in your local bank or credit union, you'll be able to do it. You won't be able to put a lot in there. Just going to put enough to pay your bills if you have any bills. But 99.9% of it's going to sit on the XRP ledger, QFS, under QFS, in the fifth dimension. Nice and safe. See, the banks don't get to touch this money anymore. Even the money that you would put into a bank or a credit union going forward for a short period of time till you realize it's pointless. They can't do anything with it. They can't claim it as theirs like they do now. And this is where the whole issue pops up about Basel III, Basel IV. They raised the security requirements for banks going forward. So they have to have the minimum assets, not anybody's money, but their money. Tier 1 banks they operate on their own capital. So if they don't have enough capital to cover your $100,000 deposit coming from the quantum financial system, your quantum access account, when we first get started, they got to go buy some insurance. Who sells the insurance? Or who is the insurance? It's XRP. Now, can they own XRP? No. But what can they do? Good morning, everybody. It's Monday. It's the holiday. It's Labor Day. And I've got a very, very special video here for you. This video is a brand new slideshow to present the plan and purpose for XRP, the XRP ledger, and how it works within our new QFS quantum financial system. For most of you that know, I'm the leading expert in the pricing discovery and valuation for XRP. Having been on 3 valuation committees with Jimmy Valley at Valhill Capital, presented 2 offers to the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury Department using my base 10 pricing models. And it was time to come back and revisit. This was what I originally thought that my only project would be on Twitter when the Lord asked me to come over and be his messenger back on April 3rd of 2021. And that blossomed into working on the Humanitarian Initiative Trust template, working on the Redemption Center protocols, having presented that information on the Charlie Ward Show in February 23, only to hear him say, "Dave, I'm so glad you said that. I couldn't say it because I was under a non-disclosure, and now that you've said it, I can confirm what you said to be accurate." And then also working on the pricing, discovery, and valuation for gold on our new quantum financial system. And that led into the last project, which was the Zimbabwe pricing. And if you haven't seen those videos, wow. It's time. It's time. We are there. We've actually had our Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump, come out and say, get ready for this Friday. Things are going down. And when I say that, it's not to say that everything's happening Friday. What I'm saying is we've reached a culmination point. We've been working extremely hard. When I say we, I'm talking about White Hat Military Alliance, Global Alliance. I'm talking about Space Force. I'm talking about all of the people that are participating in disseminating information that is true and factual, that's not disinformation, that's not misinformation, or just a chat in front of the camera. I had no idea on that day before, on April 2nd, when the Lord asked me to come and reveal his revelation to everybody on Twitter with regards to a buyback on XRP, with regards to the clawback of illegal cryptocurrency transactions. And I'm going to stop right there because I want to make sure people understand, and this is primarily for the new person, there is crypto currencies. Crypto means crypt in the grave. And then there's digital assets. And there's 8 primary digital assets that are going into our new quantum financial system. I call them Snow White and 7 Dwarfs. And why is that? Snow White is XRP. XLM, IOTA, HBAR, those other workers are necessary during a very short period of time, maybe 2 to 3 years, as we work our way into this new system. Just like with banks. There are no banks that are running on their own. All banks and credit unions have been acquired by our new U.S. Treasury reserve banking system. It's all part of our new republic, the Republic of the United States of America. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes building a foundation. And if you're a new listener today, I thank you for taking the time. And I also want to let you know that all of this work that I've put in over 3+ years, it was because God wanted you to know what was going on. I don't do this for myself. I don't do this to be liked. I don't do this for clicks. I did this because he asked me to come and be his mouthpiece on Twitter. No one knew the term buyback until I brought it to the community. And look what's happened. It is spread like wildfire. Now, some people are a little bit behind in terms of understanding the pricing, but this is probably the most concise video that I've spent time putting together. And this isn't going to be a long video. So you can have a sigh of relief right there. But it's intended to give you everything you need to know about XRP in a nutshell. Now, does it include over 150 pages from my white papers? No. Does it include the 8 pages I had in the white paper that Valhalla Capital put out? And I was one of the contributors, one of the 6 contributors in the valuation committee. A piece or two. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is you're going to come to understand a few things. You're going to understand about XRP. What's the plan and purpose for XRP? What's the XRP ledger? Nobody talks about it. Why is that? Except for me. And lastly, how does this thing work? It doesn't operate like anything you can imagine. So we're going to start to move through this. Will I miss things? Absolutely. Being that this is going to be maybe a 30-minute video, there'll be things that aren't covered, but you can go to my Rumble channel. You can read my posts on Twitter at DavidXRPLion, just like it says right here. And you can get fully caught up. And you don't need to be clicking on anything else out there. You don't need to be looking to see what Bitcoin's doing or anything else, because it's not going to be around. We're going into a massive conversion of our economic system that is so deep that it's removing all evil. And when I say remove, why don't I just use the word? They're being raptured away. And I won't go into any great length on that. But, understand there are new times ahead. Everything that's been stolen in all the generations before you is going to be given back to you multiplied over 7-fold. God's already promised it, and he's already taken care of it. Proverbs 6, verse 30 through 31. I'll paraphrase. Don't worry about the thief who breaks into your house because he's hungry. But once he's caught or known, he has to repay 7-fold, even if that includes selling his home. Well, for over 100 years, the Federal Reserve, IRS, SEC, had one plan. That was to steal, kill, and destroy. But those days are over. The banks have all been taken over. There won't be CBDCs. They won't be operating on their own. They're lucky if they're here for 2 to 3 years. And they're only going to be here, the ones that survive, are for the transition period, so that all of us can become acquainted with how to operate on a day-to-day basis using our new quantum financial system. Now, I'll tell you, when I got started on this, I was sitting there and I was mapping out my slides, and all of a sudden, the Lord just dropped this revelation on me. And he said, Dave, XRP security. And I mean, you're probably doing the same thing right now. It's like, wait a minute. XRP security? He goes, yeah, Dave. What letter's missing? I looked at it and I read it. I wrote it down and I read it back to myself. XRP is wait a minute. What did the SEC charge? And we know about the SEC lawsuit. It was a protective measure to put Brad, Chris Larson, and everybody else associated with Ripple, as well as XRP, into the White Hat military protection program to keep people away from XRP and to give the White Hat Global Military Alliance and Space Force time to eradicate all the evil, to destroy the dump tunnels, to save the children, to destroy the Bitcoin mining farms, which are underneath Three Rivers Dam, and to prepare ourselves for the new quantum financial system, which is 100% gold asset backed currency standard. Not gold standard. Gold standard was the Federal Reserve and the cabal just giving a promise. But there was no audit or any way to prove if they even had the gold to back the currency. Now that all changes, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. But I went, wait a minute. XRP is security. It's missing the letter A. The SEC claimed XRP is a security. And it hit me just like a ton of bricks. Like, I'm sure right now you're going, the music is playing, heaven's opened, you can hear the harps. It's like, wait a minute. See, the Lord had me make everybody aware of the revelation of what the SEC's purpose was in protecting Ripple and XRP. Now, when we look at this, we go, wait a minute, XRP is security. It's not a security. So the SEC could never have come in and proved it to be security. And now we're going to move forward and you're going to see why. And it's going to just blow your mind. And I'm super excited about sharing this with everybody on Labor Day. So if you want to put on pause, go grab a notebook, some pens and paper, your favorite beverage. I always recommend that you just listen to the presentation the first time through. Then go back and listen to it again. And this time take notes. Because the first time through, you're going to hear everything. You're not going to miss anything. And this is what I find with people that don't do that. They come into my Twitter page and they start asking questions about what I just presented in the video. And I know exactly what they did. They sat there and they ran through the video, didn't take a note, missed the most important part, and then come back and want me to re-educate them on what was just covered. There just isn't enough time in the day. I figured out I'm working the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs, working with the Lord on all the posts, the projects, and the discoveries, and the prophecies, and everything. So if I have a chance when I am taking a little personal time, and I happen to come in and just give a quick answer, that's about all I can do. I can't spend much time. But we have so many new people coming on board right now. They don't want to do the homework. They don't want to do the research. They want the free meal. They want to come in and get all the answers and not have to work. Well, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have to do some work. So I'm going to give you a little tough love and just let you know it's up to you. God made it very clear. None of us have a responsibility or are responsible to educate other people on this, on the Zim bond, on the Humanitarian Initiative Trust, on the XRP buyback. What's the value? How does it work? What's the protocols at the Redemption Center? Just take that weight off your back and set it down. It's not your responsibility. And I remember the day he told me that over 2 years ago. I was like, whew. Now, I have a special love for all of you. And it drives me every single day to do what I do. You couldn't do what I'm doing and continue to get up every day, or not even get up because you stayed up, because the Lord's dropping revelation and you're trying to put it together so people can understand it. Now, a lot of people say what I'm presenting is too high up the educational scale. I'm just going to tell you it's not. If you'll take the time to lean into the Lord and take a look at it, it's all there. Just like this. It's all there. But it's okay if you don't. If you don't pick up the message, it's okay. God knows that. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm just the messenger. If you have any issues with what I present, don't bring them to me. I'm the messenger. You take them straight to God. Go talk to Him about it. I do nothing on my own authority. I operate under His authority. He screens everything in every post and everything I say in a video. And there are times when I want to say a few more things and He won't let me. So I ask you to understand my position, but at the same point, I'm not here for your opinions. I'm not asking you to evaluate God's message. I'm just asking you to listen to it, to receive it. But if you feel it's not for you, then put it down. It's okay. And doesn't hurt my feelings. So just want to make sure everybody understands. There's a lot of stuff in here that does not make sense. Now put yourself in my shoes. He's dropping this stuff on me. Everything he's told me since I started, 100% true. 100% true. Jimmy Valley vetted over 1.5 years of information and made that very claim to the valuation committee. Everything he's been saying for the last 1.5 years, it's all 100% true. You don't have to worry about what he says. See, I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to get something from you like most people out there with their discords and this and that, selling gold. I'm trying to give to you what the Lord wants you to see. That's the difference. So on that, let's enjoy this presentation. If it's your first time, your eyes are really going to be opened. Big time. Big time, because there's so many different correlations that are popping up right now. It's just absolutely amazing. Okay. We're going to move through these slides pretty quick. Who's this happy guy look like? I'm not going to say his name, but I really like the picture. Good looking guy, nice straight teeth, good beard, nice hair. But he's pointing at the XRP coin token. I made this. And it's the master key. XRP is the master key. See, being a master key, you're not a security. Why? It was never intended to be a cryptocurrency. It wasn't intended to really be traded. And if any of you are out there going, man, this thing just doesn't move, I can't trade it. Duh. It's not its purpose. It's a diamond. And in order to keep it secure, they had to throw it in the sandbox with all the other toys. And when people got too close, that's when the SEC came in. And the SEC has done nothing but protect XRP, even though they have to, put on the persona. Gary Gensler, he's gonna win the Oscar or the Emmy for the best actor in his role. But all that happened after our current CIC had to step away. And interestingly enough, you should know that just before he did, he handed over control of our government to the military. That's why he's our commander-in-chief and not our president. They've taken over in order to take out corruption and evil. The Big E. That was prophesied by Kim Clement back in 2011. Now I'm gonna mention something here. I was invested in a hydrogen fuel cell stock that I actually knew the gentleman who developed the technology. He was a friend of mine, and he was an Intel emeritus. Well, Toyota picked it up, but the company never did anything with it. And now you've got Toyota coming out with hydrogen cars. But when he talked about the Big E, he talked about energy. Kim did. Called the Big E. It's energy. It's something like that. It's revolutionary. Well, at the same time, Kim had a prophecy, had a dream where in the dream, he saw the letter X. He saw something in the middle. He said he thought it was a number. And then it had a P at the end of it. XRP. And that popped up. See, I was in the other investment, not knowing anything about this crypto space, trading the futures. So when he said he had a dream about this X and this thing ending with a P, it didn't register to me. But when I saw the video, and I've actually posted it, it made perfect sense. Because you could almost look at this and almost see the number 8 if you were a little, foggy-eyed. And of course, the Lord didn't want him to have the full vision on it, but having an X and having a P and its 3 letters, that was enough. But I want you to see what is around the outside of this coin and what I designed here. it says XRP under his finger, universal asset, universal asset. XRP, 100% gold-backed digital asset collateral. I know this is the first time you've ever heard this term. I'm coining this phrase because this is how you describe what XRP is. XRP is security. It offers security and a guarantee on the quantum financial system as the universal asset, 100% gold-backed digital asset collateral. I mean, I can just drop the mic right now and we can stop with one slide. But here's why this is important. Being the master key, XRP opens something called the gateway. And this is a graphic I designed over the last week. And I've had this gateway component for, oh my gosh, almost a year. I just didn't know what to do with it. I found out that we've been jumping through Stargates since the early 60s, and the show was actually filmed at Cheyenne Mountain, and the military people actually worked at Cheyenne Mountain because that's where the Stargate is. Now, what does it say? The master key. It's the gateway to the QFS, quantum financial system, 5D, the fifth dimension. Can we access the fifth dimension? No. We can't go there yet. There'll be a time when our resonance allows us to do that. And that happens when we get back to a 13-month, 28-day calendar. And I can't go down that road right now. But all of this is behind or through the gateway. And that's where the XRPL, the XRP ledger, houses all of the funds that are coming to us, that are being mirrored right now, our bank accounts, our ISO 222 compliant digital assets, retirement accounts, no stock portfolios, nothing in a brokerage that isn't a retirement account. It's all being mirrored in real time on the XRPL QFS in the fifth dimension on the other side of the Stargate. That's why when they talk about it being unhackable, that's where it is. The nefarious bankers, even the guy with Ethereum, Buterin, tried to steal the code for XRP. See, the XRPL is ancient technology. It's over 588 million years old. It was used in prior civilization. It came into a situation just like us. They used it for maybe 25 to 30 years. And after that, there was no more need for currency. They had replicators. They could create whatever they needed. That's the road we're on, people. And I know it sounds like science fiction. Put yourself in my shoes when the Lord is revealing this. And he's giving me visions and I'm seeing it operating. And I'm asking and praising and thanking him just enough to have an awareness of it. But I don't want to know everything because I've asked to know everything about certain things, and he hasn't held back one piece of information. We've broken the codes on Mayan calendar, 819 days. How it's calculated, what it does, what it means. He took me back to the Mayan calendar, long count, and showed how that was part of a 7,885-year contract with God that gave Satan permission to steal, kill, and destroy. Well, that contract ended on December 21st, 2020, which was the day before the SEC dropped the lawsuit on Garlinghouse, Larson, and Ripple. Brad was told the day before, which was the 21st, but it didn't happen until the 22nd. Why? Because they had to be after the contract ended. Otherwise, it would have violated the terms of the contract, and the devil would have been given permission to reign over the earth for eternity. Well, God wasn't going to have that. He had already made sure, by putting the Mayans in control as a timekeeper and having Enoch help them build their clocks. So in this fifth dimension realm, we have unhackable security. We don't even need internet. We're not using this crappy virus, backdoor, third dimension internet because it's too darn slow. That's why XRP is a 60-cent token. It has nothing to do with market cap. Market cap doesn't apply to something that's 100% minted up front, or something like XRP, which nobody can own, or the purpose and plan for XRP. So you don't have to buy into that lie anymore. You just put that down. But you're gonna start to see where the FUD has brought in the fear and the doubt to keep people off kilter. But the deep state, the cabal, Kazarian Mafia, their plan was to have control of all this. They started building the XRP after David Schwartz came over from Bitcoin. David Schwartz was part of the four-man Satoshi group. There was no Satoshi Nakamoto. There wasn't somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto. It was four men. It was Hal Finney, who just 10 years ago passed away. It was Larry Page. So Hal Finney was the primary programmer. Larry Page was the assistant programmer. There was David Schwartz. He brought the NSA and DARPA, CIA. And then Elon 1.0, he brought the government money to fund it. Because it was all about moving dark money, illegal money, nefarious money, evil money, back and forth for what they were doing. Child trafficking, adrenochrome, organ harvesting, all of that evil crap. So if you're in Bitcoin, guess what? You're wearing that moniker right now. So it's like being in the gang without knowing you're in the gang. And once you know, you have an obligation to do one of two things. Either you accept evil and you're going to have your day of judgment very, very quick, or you sell it all and get out of it right now. And you run to the Lord and you repent, knowing that you got into that. You allowed yourself to get into it. There were 3 opportunities for me when I was a full-time trader, to get into it under $1. Not one time did the Lord give me permission to do it. But I looked at XRP for my brother on a due diligence request. Within 5 minutes, the Lord said, this is the one, Dave. All in. And I haven't looked back. So you need to be aware, if you hold that, what you hold. Because it's not going through. It's not going into the new economy. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the other 99.5%, they're all just going to shut down when the markets shut down. Markets are going to go away. We're not going to have stock markets anymore. We're not going to have a fiat. We're not going to have Forex market anymore. Because all currencies are par 1-to-1, gold backed, gold asset backed. But these are the things you need to be prepared for, because they're coming fast. This all happens because we've gotten rid of evil. It has limitless transaction speed. Transaction speed is what has kept the price for XRP where it is. And I've got countless situations where I pointed that out. I've done it with slides. I've done it with posts. I've done it with thumbnails. All you need to know is it can't get the transaction speed it needs on the corrupt 3D internet. But once it goes into the 5D realm, there's no limit. The governor comes off. So if we need to produce 100 quadrillion transactions per second, it's done automatically. And in October of 2022, 3 men won the Nobel Peace Prize, having shown that Einstein's theory of relativity equals mc squared. The E, the energy. Get it? E, the energy was changed. The fifth dimension already knew what the third dimension needed. How's that possible? How does God know what you need before you ask? He says it in the Bible. He has already prepared and laid up everything that each one of us needs, now and going forward. But we don't see the manifestation until we acknowledge Him as the Creator, as our Father. And we stop asking, ask, seek, and knock. Why? Because we now have direct communication with Him through the Holy Spirit. That happened after Jesus was baptized. Prior to that, yeah, it was a little tough. He had to send angels. Now imagine what's going to happen. Okay? So there's that big E. You're going to see how that changes. And there's unbounded storage. They took the QFS, 5D, in the fifth dimension, and they went back in time into the third dimension, all the way back to the 1700s. And they picked up and recorded all of the banking transactions to the 1700s. There isn't anything that they don't have. Hello? And every single transaction worldwide on the QFS going through the XRP ledger, with XRP opening the gateway so the transactions can flow back up from the third dimension through the gateway into the fifth dimension. There's no need to worry about storage. It's limitless. It's unbounded. It's like whatever it needs to be, it is. Isn't that crazy? I know it might be hard to kind of get your head around it. But see, that's because they've dumbed us all down. They've told us that $1 million is, oh boy, you're a millionaire. What do you see what's coming? That'll be pocket change on your Q phone. Okay, so come back and look at this. This is the flow, the electricity. You notice here it's kind of red and a little bit of purple, some white, and then it comes through, and at the other side, it's now looking like the rainbow. That's the promise that God made to Noah. He'd never flood the earth again, wipe out mankind. But through that gateway is the other side. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Brad Garlinghouse has always told us it's all about the exchange of value. Remember, he talked about it's the internet of value. We want to be able to complete a transaction just like an email, sending an email. He has been dropping so many hints and so many clues. And I've been seeing him, and he's been dropping stuff to confirm stuff that I'm posting on. So what is the exchange of value? It's just a transaction or an interaction between two or more parties that have something of value that they want to transfer. It's goods, it's services, it's money, it's information. It can even be intangible benefits like trust or goodwill. Every single transaction in the world, every single second of the day, is going to flow through that gateway. It's all going to be tabulated and rounded up by the 7 dwarfs. It's all going to go up to Starlink. Starlink's going to send it to the XRPL in the 3rd dimension. And then XRP opens up the gateway. It goes right into the 5th dimension. So exchange of value is extremely important. It has to do with payments. But see, you gotta understand the meaning of the words. And I'm speaking to myself too, because this has been an education process for me. I didn't have any experience. in decentralized networks, blockchain, digital assets. I came from the world. I was a full-time trader trading futures, designing my own algorithms, my own trading tools. I didn't know anything about this stuff, but he put me in the right place at the right time, going all the way back to 1974, 1994, when I was in a private meeting with the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, who told me about this new program that they were doing. They were going to get rid of income taxes, privatize the Postal Service, change up Social Security, get rid of income tax, have a flat 14% consumption tax. Now they're calling it a national sales tax. It didn't have a name back then, but he said it'd be 30 years. 30 years. That's right now. That's right now. And I'd forgotten all about it. And the Lord reminded me in one of the valuation committees with Jimmy. Exchange of value between two or more parties. Okay? XRP is the master key for the XRP ledger. Again, I said nobody talks about the ledger. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Let's just give them a whole bunch of shiny stuff. Let's give them the Shakaka coins and all the other stuff. And let's just razzle and dazzle them. And let's get them stuck on technical analysis. And then let's just get them hyped up about events that are coming. And I was really surprised. I wrote an article on Twitter, and it got picked up by one of the digital asset tabloids. And they did a really nice job. I was quite impressed. But they missed a few things because I wasn't referring to XRP dropping down to a low and then rising back up to where it was as being a gain. No, that's the misinformation you get from stockbrokers, mutual funds, hedge funds, and anybody else that wants to show you missed out on opportunity. XRP has been stuck at about 62.5 cents. If it ever breaks above it, it comes right back down. And it's all tied to transaction speed. And I didn't put my thumbnail in here. You can go find it. It's in some of the videos. It's in my my James. Oh, I'm gonna mess this up. James 6.8 interview, and it blew him away to know that. So, like I pointed out in the article or in my request, I said, hey, I'd like somebody to show me legitimate work on a price for XRP. And you can't use technical analysis. Can't use BitBoy. You can't use all the other things. So explain to me why it should go up when it hasn't. And that's all I've made people aware of. It's not going up because of this. So everybody gets pumped up. Oh, we're getting the bull run. We're going to have the pump. No, we're not. It's going to go up when the lawsuit gets settled. It got settled for Brad and Chris. Didn't go up. It went up leading into and then came right back down under 62.5 cents. It's going to go up when Judge Torres rules on the fine. It went up a little bit, but if you're at, let's just say you're at 62.5 cents and it drops to 38 and it comes back up, that's not a gain. That's funny math. That's Wall Street math. That's not a gain. That's where the crypto tabloid missed the point. You don't call those gains. The point of what I wrote was just talking about the fact that it can't go up. Now, I did point out an interview that I did about a month ago. Can't remember if it was with Patriot Underground or Jesse Hale, but I did say once we got the fine settled, and it was so interesting with what Ripple has paid for attorney's fees and what they had to pay for the fine was exactly in my range of 250 million to 375 million. Why? It was base 10 math. I already knew where it was going to land. But the point being is, they could take the cap off and let the traders make their profit, if that's what you're in it for. If you're a trader and you want to make profit on XRP, look for the cap to come off, and it could go to, as I said, it could go to as high as $5. So get your money now, get your profit now, because that's what you've intended to do. So you should just do it. So XRP is the first three letters of XRPL for a specific reason. The master key opens the gateway to the XRPL, the QFS in the third dimension, and the fifth dimension. Once it opens the ledger, both the third dimension and the fifth dimension communicate simultaneously. On the third dimension, it consolidates and reports all 3D activity to Starlink. Okay? Liquidity is the security and guarantee. So isn't that kind of what our Federal Reserve did when the US dollar was considered the world reserve currency? They didn't have anything to use to pay out if there was a disaster other than printing more money. So that's how they made their guarantee. But they didn't have the money. They just printed it. The QFS has gold and other precious metals and artifacts. I mean, they have enough gold on there right now. It's assayed, certified, and blockchain identified on the XRPL ledger in the fifth dimension where it can't be touched, to provide all of the security and guarantee through XRP for all transactions on the ledger, like a car purchase. The security and guarantee comes because XRP is backed. It's given a value. And you're going to see what that value is. And most of you already know what I've already proven using base 10 math. Proved it. To make sure both sides of the transaction can't be damaged. If I'm the buyer, I can't be damaged. The seller can't be damaged. So that's what XRP does. It provides the security and the guarantee as a digital asset collateral. And it can do that because it's the master key and opens up the gateway. The L stands for ledger. And what does a ledger do? If you're familiar with accounting, it's just it's an accounting and record keeping system. Missed that one. Should have taken that out. Used to report, record, and store. See, that's what has to happen. Every single transaction, every single second of the day, around the world, has to be put onto the XRP ledger, into the fifth dimensions system, the storage, to report, record, and store. And I remember the Lord told me this. It's like, I'm trying to figure out what this thing is out there and what it's going to do. And then the Lord gives me the revelation, Dave, it's to report, it's to record, and it's to store. None of this is done in our third dimension realm. Now, there's going to be servers and things like that XLM uses as who was the the seventh in the Seven Dwarfs, who was the one that was in charge? Told all the other ones what to do. I can't remember. But that's XLM, okay? By the way, did you know that XLM and XRP were black hat operations in the very beginning, right? Because the cabal thought that we were going to have the Klaus Schwab system, the Great Reset, where we have nothing, own nothing, and we're happy. And their intention was to do it by controlling all of our money. And they were going to do it through this. Well, the White Hat Global Military Alliance using Space Force took it all back. And they had started on all that as early as 2012. Why? Well, that's when Jed McCaleb, who was Rothschild, got tasked with building XRP. He brought in David Schwartz from Bitcoin because David realized that that was going nowhere. See, it was never about a store of value. Well, it was a store of value for the crooks, for the evil people, right? Because they needed to hide it. They needed to hide the payment for what they were doing. And stuff that they did, whew, terrible. But what they didn't know was every single transaction was already on the XRP ledger in the fifth dimension. Remember, I said it went all the way back to the 1700s and picked up all the banking transactions, which meant stock market, which meant everything. So they had a trap. And they thought, oh, I can carry around this little device, this cold wallet, hard wallet, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to have all the little representations of my digital assets on there, my crypto. And I can hand it around and no one's going to tell me what to do, and I can do it behind closed doors and nobody will see me do it. Wrong. It was the biggest con job in the world. And when I came on board, I said, what's taking place right now is the largest sting operation the world has ever seen. And it is. And it's almost over. Thank God. Hallelujah. But every single transaction has history. On our new QFS system, every transaction of ownership records 50 owners. Now, I remember a couple of years ago, I got a call from Clinton Davis, or Clinton Donnelly. He's the crypto CPA. And we were working on a few things, and he says, Dave, I just got this new program. I can look back at the history for any digital asset, any token. I said, really? Well, I tell you, that information was so timely. Excuse me, I had to get a drink. Because the Lord was telling me things about the XRPL that only David knew. And of course, he couldn't share with us. But the moment anything moved, see, every single digital asset, cryptocurrency, has to go onto the XRPL. Think of it as a big filing cabinet in Cheyenne Mountain. So 2012, 2009, whatever the year is, you start buying Bitcoin. You're over on Binance. You're doing this. You're doing that. You then are told, no, you can't buy XRP unless you go through Uphold. All the platforms and exchanges delist. Oh, but wait a minute. I'm on Binance. I used a VPN. I told them I was in Singapore. So I'm going to go dump some Ethereum or some Bitcoin to buy some XRP. And that was illegal. Gary Gensler made everybody aware of that. You can't buy on a foreign exchange if you're a U.S. resident to buy XRP. Remember all the restrictions? Nobody would sell it except for Uphold. What was the reason for that? It's to track it, to know who was doing what. Why? Because it's so important to our future. It's not XLM. XLM and the other 7 dwarfs, they're only going to be needed as long as we're going to need banks around. Because you can't do anything without XRP as the master key. But I brought that up because the White Hats pushed out Jed. And then Jed took the code that was used to create the XRP token. And he copied it. He literally stole it. That's how I would look at it. And he just did. I just found this document this week. And all he did was copy and find and replace. And everywhere it said XRP, he put in XLM. Now you can go watch the movie Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey, and it's the story of XRP and XLM. And I can't say any more because I got to push through. But go watch it. It's incredible. Government always builds 2 of everything, right? Well, they knew they had to give up 50% of the equity. So if I have 2 companies and each gives up 50%, I still have I have the sum of 2 companies, which equals 1 whole. Crazy. Crazy. In 5D, it manages the flow of all worldwide liquidity needs 24/7, 365 days a year. There will be nothing you cannot do on your Q phone or your Q laptop 24 hours a day. Your money will move from your quantum access account on the QFS, which already exists. So don't buy into these scammers out there trying to tell you, oh, you got to open up your QFS account. Have you opened up your QFS account? I can help you do it. Send over your XRP. And they steal it. But did they really steal it? If that happens to you, you need to put together a packet, send it over to David SCHWARTZ, or contact Clinton Donnelly. Because guess what? Remember I told you? It retains the ownership, the prior ownership records. Now, if they're doing it to hold it, chances are it's coming back. I personally believe God will make good on it in other ways. So, no fear. Okay? This is right from Brad Garlinghouse. Ripple means exchange of value. Nobody else in the world offers exchange of value. This is an interview he did on January 10th, 2021. That means there is no face-to-face competition for Ripple and probably will never be. Because, why? The main advantage that Ripple has and nobody else has is XRP. How does the CEO of a company make that kind of a statement? Because he knows. And it was, I could only pull so much out of the article because of time and space. But it literally went on to say that there's no peer on Earth that does what XRP does. There is no peer on Earth. There is no peer on Earth. That means XLM is not a peer. It can't do what XRP does. Even though Jed probably stole the code to create XLM. And then I've been told he's been gone for more than a couple of years, and the The White Hat Military Alliance took it back, took it over. It's just like a backup. It's like having two if something happens to the one. XRP is the one. But it's not a reserve currency. It's not a world currency. Why? Because it's not a currency. Remember? It's security. It's digital asset collateral. It's the guarantee. It's like being Lloyd's of London. You're giving everybody confidence to go ahead and do the transaction because your system makes sure that everything is on the up and up. XRP bridges the gap from the third dimension into the fifth dimension. And this is where all of the money, our money, is going to reside. If you want to put some in your local bank or credit union, you'll be able to do it. You won't be able to put a lot in there. Just going to put enough to pay your bills if you have any bills. But 99.9% of it's going to sit on the XRP ledger, QFS, under QFS, in the fifth dimension. Nice and safe. See, the banks don't get to touch this money anymore. Even the money that you would put into a bank or a credit union going forward for a short period of time till you realize it's pointless. They can't do anything with it. They can't claim it as theirs like they do now. And this is where the whole issue pops up about Basel III, Basel IV. They raised the security requirements for banks going forward. So they have to have the minimum assets, not anybody's money, but their money. Tier 1 banks they operate on their own capital. So if they don't have enough capital to cover your $100,000 deposit coming from the quantum financial system, your quantum access account, when we first get started, they got to go buy some insurance. Who sells the insurance? Or who is the insurance? It's XRP. Now, can they own XRP? No. But what can they do? They can purchase its collateral power, purchase its guarantee, purchase its security. That's not for us to benefit from. That's going to happen for the U.S. Treasury Department as the... Well, let me just stop right there. We'll come to that in a second. Okay? Fantastic little tidbits that Brad has thrown out there over the years. Orders of magnitude, dozens. This was during a CNBC interview that he did back in June of 2018. What is order of magnitude? The only people I've ever heard use order of magnitude, Brad Garlinghouse, and then on a TV series called Outer Banks, go to season 3, episode 1. It just screams XRP in it. He talks about the fact that he's on a quest. He's searching for the gold. And it's in the order of magnitudes. But see, Brad added another word, dozens. Who says? He asked, if you actually read the interview, and again, I couldn't put it all in here. He asked him this question about the future of XRP. And Brad says, orders of magnitude, magnitudes, dozens. It was like, where did that come from? Totally out of the blue. Made no sense in how he responded. But what was he doing? I was working on the valuation. I had talked about base 10 math. Orders of magnitude. Generally, the order of magnitude of a number is the smallest power of 10 used to represent the number. Power of 10, that's base 10 math. That's how I proved the valuation for XRP and for the quantum financial system in the fifth dimension. So this is what Brad says. And it all comes back to if we're solving a real problem for real customers. There's so many different examples. This is supposed to be the word in this space. Excuse me for the typo. See, I don't think Brad was talking about in the digital asset space. I think he was referencing space. Why? Fifth dimension. Orders of magnitude. And then he goes on to say, there's ICOs where I don't really understand the problem the token is solving. Those are ones where I'm very skeptical about what the future of that value looks like. You notice how fast they dropped the ICO for Ripple? Think about that. Lord told me it wasn't going to happen, just like the relisting wasn't going to happen for a long, long time. And this was how people got you to tune into their channels, click their videos, pay them, be in their private master groups by telling you all these things would happen and then they would be reflected in the price of XRP. No. Ripple began to buy their own XRP. They turned around and purchased back all of the Ripple stock that they gave the employees with XRP. Now, no one talks about that. And I actually did an article on that, calculated the value. So they don't have any worries. They have no worries at all. Matter of fact, would you like to do an ICO where they were getting $45 to $50 per share? Or would you rather have the valuation you're going to see come up for one XRP, which is fantastic? So Brad's not talking about how institutions are going to buy and utilize XRP. No, they're not going to buy or utilize XRP as XRP. The only way they would utilize what XRP can do, what it can offer, but not the token, not the coin, not the digital asset. Nobody can own it. It's all being acquired in a buyback. Ripple's going to be the fiduciary. I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag again. They're the most appropriate party to do that. They've got David SCHWARTZ. He's a genius. He's the only one that Space Force could work with to be able to put together what needed to be done, having worked on Bitcoin coding. But it's about the coverage of the money. How do you cover it? I remember telling Jimmy this. Jimmy, this is insurance. It's like having insurance. Tokenization is just another way of saying insurance in case something happens. But Brad says, Brad's use of the orders of magnitude, they identify base 10 number, and the way he presented it with dozens, it falls between, actually this is supposed to be a 2. I apologize for that. Man, I had some problems trying to get this stuff in. So this should be 10 to the 12th. This should be 10 to the 24th. And the mean value is, of the two, is 10 to the 17th, which is $1 million. Sorry about that. Let's talk about David SCHWARTZ, the genius, the man. He can't do a lot of talking, but he said some things back in 2017. And I believe he said these things because nobody was listening. Nobody was picking up what he was putting down. People that think at that level get to the point when people aren't understanding what they're trying to secretly share, that they realize that unless they just tell them, they're not going to get it. Now, I've had people say that about some of the stuff that I've done. Dave, you got to bring it down. You got You got to do it like you're talking to an 8th grader. And this is my 8th grade slideshow, by the way. Okay. It went through a 5-hour review, and you wouldn't believe what got kicked out. Stuff that I thought was great. It's like, no, too complicated, Dave. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. So, from what we've learned, David said XRP at $1 million is better than XRP at $1. I mean, it's like a Chinese fortune cookie. It is what it is. And based upon a couple things that I've put together, again, not just stuff from me, we can calculate it only 3 ways. So we got 2 things that David did. Then Vincent Kennedy did something. You'll see that. And then you'll see what I did. Okay, here's what David said. If XRP costs $1 million, they'd need 1 XRP that costs $1 million. That's the sum of what he said. It can't be dirt cheap. That doesn't make any sense. See, here he is. He's the genius, and he's getting frustrated because people aren't getting it. If XRP costs $1, they'd need 1 million XRP, which would cost $1 million. If XRP costs $1 million, they'd need 1 XRP, which would cost $1 million. See, he's having to help people understand there's like economies of scale here. There's a reason for XRP having a value of $1 million and not $1, not 10 cents, not $10,000. Okay. Jimmy Valley's video was the first video I saw. Him and James Rule. And Jimmy said XRP was designed to carry a value between 10 and 35,000. To carry a value. Okay. Well, we've gone way beyond that because now we're understanding we're going into the quantum realm. We've got all this money that's coming. Everybody's got tens, if not hundreds of millions and billions. Currency exchanges, Zim bond redemptions, all the money that was stolen on your Social Security card, your birth certificate, all the bonds that were traded on Wall Street behind our back. Every way they could make money on us as a corporation. But he's laying it all out right here. Now, see, I didn't come in here knowing all this stuff. I got the revelation from the Lord. I started to do the work. And then this stuff popped up later to confirm. So it's kind of like David was already saying it. I didn't know he said it. I did the math that proved what he said was true. So it's like I vetted David's comments to prove them. Not just, hey, it's going to be $1 million. Like everybody out there who spouts out some number about XRP's price. You'll notice there's nothing to back it. I've done white papers. I've done proofs. I've shown the math. I've used the greatest math minds in the world. Here's the second thing you said December 17th. If banks were to adopt XRP, which means they have to purchase XRP, would they not want to keep the market price of XRP low? See, what he's saying is, I'm going to give you an example as XRP as a security. Because what did the banks do in those situations? They came in and they worked with the SEC, which was basically the mob, and what they did in the past. They would strong arm the company, tell them if they wanted to play in their field on Wall Street, they had to give them 50% of the equity. So we saw this with all the the big companies, Intel, Microsoft, Facebook, you name it, when they came out, their prices took off and then they tanked. And it was the analysts from the banks that came out and said, oh no, looks like they're not going to make it. And the price got lower and lower and lower. I think Facebook came out at 90 and got down to 13, and they were already digging the grave. And then all of a sudden, it just turned and went straight up. And then the banks are right there with their analysts talking about where it's going, where it's going. So when it took the dive, they all jumped in, got their best clients in. The nefarious people had more money to pay for their stuff. And that was their program. But see, right here, he's dissecting and saying, okay, let's treat it like a security. Wouldn't they want it to be low, right? Because they're going to hold it and they're going to wait for it to go up over time. And then look what he drops. If XRP is finite, right? All of it was minted at one time on May 26th of 2012. Jed McCaleb got the code from Arthur Brito and minted all 100 billion XRP tokens onto the XRP ledger. One and done. So that's what he's saying when he says finite. It can't be mined. And he's saying, wouldn't that hinder Main Street from wanting it? It's kind of like, well, why did they want stocks? Well, because when they ran the price up, what could they do? Stock split. I mean, all of them, Intel, Microsoft, Cisco, all of them. I mean, we just had the 10-for-1 split with NVIDIA. You know, it gets up to $700, you split it to $100, and then boom, it goes right back up. What he's saying is, if the banks were going to purchase it, they'd want it low, right? Because that's what banks do. They buy low. But wait a minute. What if it's finite? What if you can't do anything with it? You can't split it. You can't make any more. Then who's going to want it? See? So David himself here, and this revelation is just coming now as we're talking through this, iron sharpens iron. He's basically saying it's not a security. They can't purchase it. We're not talking about Main Street adoption because it's not a security. It's security. And then he goes on to say, well, no, they don't want it. He says the price of the XRP you need to make a $1 million payment will always be at least $1 million. Wait a minute. Sounds like Brad Garlinghouse. Orders of magnitude, dozens. He's talking about banks. He's talking about market price. He's talking about mainstream adoption. And then he turns around and says, no. It's almost like he caught himself and said, wait a minute. I've said too much. Now I need to tell him what I really wanted to tell him. So he tells the truth. But it doesn't look like the truth, right? And then he's giving us the meat and potatoes. The price of XRP you need to make a $1 million payment will always be at least $1 million. We can't do that with XRP at $1. He just told us that in the prior one. Oops. He said, if it costs $1 million, XRP has to be $1 million. It's like you can see him. He's going through this thought process. It's November. And 17 days later, oh, there's that number 17. What's 17? Q. The epiphany. Wait a minute. Now let me tell you the truth, guys. See if anybody picks it up. The price of XRP you need to make $1 million payment will always. I mean, that's a guarantee right there. That's a guarantee. And what is XRP? Security and guarantee. So he's giving us the guarantee. It's $1 million. And then he comes in and he makes this statement. The truth is precisely the opposite. He's not talking about this truth. He's talking about this truth. Okay? The banks aren't going to adopt Ripple. See, he says adopt Ripple. Ripple has nothing to do with XRP. From a purchasing standpoint, you don't get anything of Ripple when you buy XRP. They're just the fiduciary. So you really got to tear this stuff down and analyze it forensically as to what are they saying. It's exactly what I did. Higher prices tend to correlate with higher liquidity, which means cheaper payments. He's not talking about the money being cheaper. He's talking about the ability to make the payment is less strenuous. If XRP is $1 million, you just use one token. Smaller burn. But if it's $1, you got to use 1 million of them. That's going to be a much more expensive way to pay. Now, we'll tell you this. The XRPL in Cheyenne Mountain is already operating on free energy, Tesla free energy. And I got confirmation on that. Because when I was in the valuation committee, I ran into a situation where I calculated how many seconds in the day, how much XRP would be needed, and within 1.37 seconds, all of the XRP was burned going into the quantum realm. Whoa. And the Lord told me, he says, Dave, remember what David said. David made the comment one time, he said this. He said, if it ever becomes necessary to remove the cost of a transaction with XRP, it can be done. Wait a minute. This is like Brad Garlinghouse coming out and saying, oh, by the way, we just want to let everybody know we're going to increase the transactions per minute or per second. So instead of doing 1,500 a second, we're going to go ahead and push that up to 34 to 3,800. I remember when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. Did somebody just look behind the curtain and see the knob? No one had ever said that you could increase the transaction speed. Well, he wasn't doing it for the third dimension realm. He was basically confirming what I had already proven, that transaction speed was related to the price for XRP at $1 million and at the current, at that time, I think it was 42.6 or 42.65 cents. So David's kind of saying the same thing. But it's all running on free energy. See, there's only a cost right now because Ripple has to pay the bills of being a fiduciary. But once the EBS goes off and we go into the quantum realm, there's no need to recoup that anymore. Why? Because they're going to be participating in the buyback with the 4.6 billion they have. Okay. So here's what Vincent Kennedy put out there. Now, I knew this already because it was all part of the stuff that I do. And I calculate all this stuff. But Vincent put out there, XRP is measured precisely to the nearest 0.000001 XRP, called a drop. The Ripple APIs require all XRP amounts to be specified in drops of XRP. Now, if you didn't know this, this is really key. This will kind of bring things into perspective for you. 1 XRP is represented as 1 million drops, meaning think of it as a pi. Oh, pi, 3.14. 159. 1 XRP can be divided into 1 million pieces. Now, going forward, everybody having these tens of millions, of billions, of trillions of dollars restored from everything that was stolen, going all the way back to Adam, and the money has already been put up in gold from the Asian elders. The minimum transaction is $1. $1. See, that's why David, back here, was talking about XRP at $1. So, again, remember, he's a genius. He's thinking without saying. He's thinking, I already know that there is 1 million drops in 1 XRP. So if each drop costs $1, then what is the price for XRP? $1 million. I mean, any way you slice it, you keep coming back to the same conclusion. But you have to dissect it. You have to forensically lay it out on the table. You got to put pencil to paper. You got to do the spreadsheets. You got to look at all this. And I did all this in proofing my number because I wasn't trying to determine a price for XRP. And you're going to see exactly how I approached it. Okay. So this is how it calculates. Million drops times $1 equals $1 million for XRP. And you can read through this. And this is where I point out what for me was a play on words. But I know Judge Torres already knew this. But XRP is the worldwide liquidity provider. See, this is not a world bank. This is not a world currency. We have the currency. We're the banks in the new system. Okay? We're seeing XRP in its true light now. It's out of the sandbox. We can look at it, we can touch it, we can hold it, we can understand what it's there to do. Okay? It's the worldwide liquidity provider. It opens up the gateway to let the liquidity flow. So, does the money actually move? It moves between the parties, between the two parties. Does XRP put any money up? No. Does XRP, and I want to be careful how I say this, does XRP bring value to the table? And it's a matter of your perspective. If you understand that it's security, it's a provider of liquidity and a guarantor of limitless security for all transactions between buyers and sellers on the ledger, which is our new quantum financial system. It doesn't say XRP puts up all the money between the two parties in the transaction. No. See, and this is where they did such a great job of hiding its true intent over the years. So people never figured it out. Well, I did. And that happened back in 2023 when he introduced me to quantum, when he brought back my meeting in 1994 about Nisara Jisara, the buyback was moved from December 2021 to make sure that Nisara Jisara happened first, so there wasn't any resentment from people that didn't have XRP when this happens, so they could get through the redemption center. And it made perfect sense. And we had to get rid of all the other nefarious people. We had to make sure all the systems were in place. 2015, all 209 nations signed the BRICS Accord at the Paris Climate Conference. And by signing that accord, they also signed the Quantum Financial System Accord. You can't utilize the benefits of the quantum financial system if you start a war. You will be extricated, all of your funds will be seized, and the other countries will take you out. That's why President Trump at the time was getting us out of Afghanistan. The time had come when we had to honor the agreement. And that's why when they pulled out, they just left everything there. And there was other reasons for some of that too. But here again, it lays it all out. So this approach doesn't look at the value. It looks at the fact that there's 1 million pieces to one XRP. Now going forward on the QFS, on the XRPL, QFS in the fifth dimension, when all the transactions are being reported to be recorded and stored in the fifth dimension, $1 will be the minimum transaction. So they'll just group the transactions into $1. So if you end up, spending 52 cents, it'll just go into the transactions, and they know that everything will round up to a perfect $1. No worries there. And really, there shouldn't be anything that costs less than $1. Even the dollar store had to raise their prices. So, that's kind of a clue right there. So a minimum transaction will be $1. There'll be 1 million $1 transactions equated to the valuation of XRP as the master key and the worldwide liquidity provider and guarantor of limitless security for all transactions. Period. Plain and simple. 8th grade math. Now let's talk about what I've done. My approach was, and I started my approach at, I knew some things going into this, but I couldn't just know them. I had to prove them, right? I had to prove them mathematically. And I was trained by a mathematical genius who trained all the Chicago floor traders on how to trade using what's called perfect math, or exact, perfect, proportional, harmonic, balanced algorithm. That's just a big way to say take 100, divide it by 8, break everything into 1/8. So it's 0, 12.5 cents, 25 cents, 37.5 cents, 50 cents, 6.25, 62.5 cents, 75 cents, 87.5 cents, and then $1. That's base 10 math, guys. 8th grade. That's how complicated it is. And it's been used on Wall Street, in finance, going all the way back to Fibonacci. And now we trained the traveling businessman how to know what to do. So I had to use a top-down approach. Thank goodness we already knew, and we had a finite number of minted XRP, 100 billion. Now see, if we didn't have that number, and this was a minted token, we could never have come up with this. Why? Because it would change. And they used the halving of Bitcoin to confuse everybody to stay over there looking at the shiny stuff. BTC, bite the cheese. That was all part of the biggest sting operation in history. And with Ethereum. But all the money really isn't all the money. It's about coming to an understanding of how much digital asset collateral is needed. It's like saying, okay, we're going to go build this project. How much insurance do we need? Oh my gosh. We better figure out how much insurance we need before we get started. Because we have to have insurance in case something happens. Well, that's what happens in the quantum realm. I literally had to sit down and figure out what the minimum amount would be as digital asset collateral, divide it by the total minted XRP to arrive at the value that XRP would have as the big E, as the master key, as the universal asset, the 100% gold-backed digital asset collateral. How much was it? And because we've all been dumbed down through the MKUltra programming, for some reason, $1 million was beyond imagination for people for XRP. Because see, they did not understand its plan or purpose. That's what I said in the very first slide. I said this slideshow is going to show you the plan and purpose for XRP, the XRPL, which is the ledger, and how it all works and functions in our new quantum financial system. So you should be getting a really good understanding of what's taken place and just how easy it is to calculate this, because we know this number right here. Okay? With this one number right here, when we divide it into this number, it gives us the value for this. So again, what is the digital asset collateral? And this is the phrase I just coined. Just like when I use the term buyback. I'm the first one to use digital asset collateral. Digital asset reserve collateral. It's the value necessary to provide the worldwide markets with sufficient liquidity with XRP as the digital asset collateral for unlimited security, with an unlimited security guarantee. Meaning, bring us your $100 trillion transaction. We got you covered. See, we could never have done this as a country without God having stored up all the gold and given the Asian elders access to an unending river of gold that replenishes itself. I was one of the first people to disclose that. And that's also true with gasoline or oil too. So the cost of gasoline is going to go down to 35 cents a gallon. It's all about the collateral. XRP is security, not a security. Some people want to know, from a number standpoint, how to get to 100 quadrillion. Well, this is work that I had done in 2021. This is work that I brought to the valuation committee with my model, working with Jimmy Valley. So I was the one that did all of the mathematical calculations to arrive at a value for XRP in the first offer of 25,000 in September 13th of 2021. And then October 28th of 2021. So you can see by the end of December of 21, I'd calculated roughly $1.75 quadrillion of exposure, if you want to call it tokenization. How much stuff do we have that we're going to need to insure or backstop? Now I carried that into my calculation at the end of 2022. So you can see it goes from here, and it comes up here, and we start right here. And boy, 2022, we had some stuff pop up. And the first thing that popped up, I was given by Jimmy Valley, and it was a loan that the Federal Reserve took out for $14.3 quadrillion. Let me show you that. This is one of the 3 pieces of paperwork. The Federal Reserve System took out a loan. Pentagon, Washington, North American Water and Power Alliance. How'd they collateralize this? They used every American as collateral and all the real estate. And why did they do that? Because we were considered chattel. That's why our Social Security card is all in caps. Our birth certificate, all in caps. So what did they do with it? They used it to build all their underground dump tunnels, where they stored 150 years worth of food in them. They had movie theaters, shopping malls. And this is where all the elites were going to go if, or I should say, when they were killing all of us off with plagues. They were all going to jump onto the nav trains, which go at, over 1,000 miles an hour. But as long as they played the game, they got a ticket to the tunnel in the end. Well, guess what? The Global White Hat Military Alliance and Space Force have cleared over 32,000 miles of tunnels, rescuing the children, taking out creatures that have been living in our world, inside of our world. And I don't have a full grasp of it, but we're going to come to find some things out here during the 10 to 12 days of lockdown that's coming, when they're running 3 8-hour segments a day for 10 days. I don't even want to go there yet. But they borrowed $14.3 quadrillion. That in itself right there, when you add it to this, took the valuation, or let's just say the guarantee security component for XRP to $160,000. Now, when we calculate everything else, and I included Nasara, I included all kinds of different things in there, the buyback, all the derivatives that were off balance sheet, unfunded pension plans, I came to a number of about 29 quadrillion. Well, then I discovered this. According to the Office of International Treasury Control, over-the-counter derivatives market is worth about 3.3 quadrillion. During the Clinton years, the fractionalized banking used a 1 to 10 ratio, which meant for every dollar in the bank, they could loan 10. Well, they increased that. For every dollar, they could loan 100. Well, what happened? They literally used it to create and package and ledger derivatives of $100 quadrillion. I just got my hands on this the other day. I've never seen this before in my life prior to having discovered it. No one ever mentioned it. They didn't tell us about it. Now, I do know that they had received so much gold from the Asian elders, the Committee of 300. One Switzerland bank, that their number, not counting the gold that they had, was 2 with 206 zeros after it. How many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 5. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. Okay, 17 zeros, we're talking 206. But it all had to be kept off the balance sheet. See? So they had a completely different financial system that they were operating under, that they couldn't tell us about. They wouldn't tell us about. So while they weren't taking care of us, they were just taking care of themselves. So I say that because now I had 100 quadrillion on here. We're almost to 130 quadrillion. Well, mathematically, when you work it out, there's some requirements in base 10 that in order to bring balance and harmony into the system, you couldn't just say, oh, we're going to use this value, divide it by 100 billion, and that's the valuation for XRP as the insurance provider, liquidity provider. What happens the moment it goes above it? See, then you're screwed. And this was one of the provisions with the 7 governing nations, or we'll call it the 7 kingdoms. Number 1, they didn't want China in control of it. 1 to U.S. Number 2, everything had to be transparent, nothing behind the curtain. That's why the Federal Reserve is gone. They were corrupt. IRS, gone, corrupt. SEC, they're, for all intents and purposes, gone too. And they didn't want to have to come back every year and raise the value for what XRP would be able to cover. So this number here was the minimum amount that I calculated, and I calculated it against all the GDP numbers for all 209 nations, transacting at 100 quadrillion transactions per second every single day. And I never exceeded the need for 100 quadrillion. So if you kind of think of this square, 100 quadrillion up here, and $1 million down here, and everything is moving in a linear fashion from the lower left to the upper right. So things can oscillate back and forth, because you're going to have fluctuation in supply and demand. But if you had a level amount, you're going to breach it instantly. And the moment you breach it is when the system fails. And that's exactly what happened with the fiat fractionalized banking system that failed. So I say XRP has a value that's determined by taking the circulating global liquidity reserve of 100 quadrillion, dividing it by the total minted XRP of 100 billion, and that equals XRP as the master key, as the provider of worldwide liquidity security as a guarantor, to be able to function on a second-by-second basis with all of the money that's coming into the system that's there right now. The U.S. received 1 followed by 45 zeros in gold from the Asian elders. And it's all covered. Everything's covered. I remember when Jimmy said to me, he said, you know, Dave, the XRP buyback, this is after accepting the fact that what I had been doing was the truth from God. He said, the buyback is like Nasara Part 2. He says, you know, they go together. I said, well, I know that. And it was almost like he was trying to tell me without telling me. And I can look back on that and go, that's kind of interesting. So they got 1 quattrodecillion, and that's 1 followed by 45 zeros. Now, see, I couldn't use that. Why? It's too much. Don't need all that much money. I mean, it's nice, but it would just inflate the value of the insurance backing. It's not necessary, at least until 2030. So I discounted it, and then look at the discount. I was like, we just get this little fraction. Well, isn't it interesting? It's like you can almost take what David had and go 0.00000001, and you come back to the 29.2 quadrillion, which is what I had over on my worksheet. Over here. Right here. So again, math is the universal language, and it does not lie. Always has to tell the truth. So that got us, that was the proof from a circulating global liquidity reserve standpoint. See, I didn't start from XRP at 1 million and go backward. If this number had only been $25 quadrillion, then XRP would have been what the equation showed, but it wasn't. So, like I said before, the math supports what David has already said. It supports what we saw Vincent do in that comment, which came from looking at the fact that there were drops. So all the money is really all the collateral. So ATM, global liquidity, 100 quadrillion, total minted 100 billion. We divide 1 by 2, 100 quadrillion divided by 100 billion, and that gives us the value. See, XRP didn't get its value by itself. Like all these other clowns out there, just give it a value. Oh, it's going to be $10,000. Oh, it's going to go here. No. It had a mathematical formula that had to proof itself and then had to substantiate running 86,400 times in a day. Like I said, I pressure tested it with 100 quadrillion transactions per second with no cost to burn. And you just can't change it. It is what it is. Now, here's something I want to cover, and we're just about done. What I did is I put together just a quick little example of liquidity. Okay, this is where people are missing the boat. They have no idea that XRP is to provide liquidity. That's why you can't use market cap. That's why you can't use technical analysis. They don't work. You have to understand what the need is, the global worldwide need for every single individual, 8 billion people. By the way, the Lord told me that 37.5% of the population is going to double our population in 12 years. And isn't it interesting? When I made that comment, 3 days later, Trump was on the news. He's walking and he puts his hand up like celebrating, and he says, our population is going to double in 12.5 years. Then he says the other night at the rally, we're going to pick up the cost for the IVF treatment. We're going to pay for it all. Because the stinking deep state cabal poisoned all of us, gave us these, well, I'm just going to say it. The smartphone is the mark of the beast. We voluntarily took it. It won't be held against us because we didn't know that. But it's electric smog. And when you put it in your back pocket or your front pocket, you sterilize yourself. That's why these young kids can't get pregnant. So for the young men, the sperm gets killed. For the women, the eggs get killed. We won't have those issues with the new Q phone. And we're going to have med beds to fix all the problems. But I wanted to address liquidity, okay? So I gave you a scale for XRP and all the talking heads. You know, we've got most of them down here. There's some people throwing this number out. Well, at least they're not here. But what I want you to see is how much collateral it makes. So at $10,000, it only makes 1 quadrillion of collateral. At 100,000, it makes 10 quadrillion. And I show you over here with the glass where that gives us the coverage. So you can see both of these are like way down here. They don't even get us out of the first realm. So this is failure. Anybody that's talking about this? Failure. Failure. Failure until you get to $100 quadrillion. It all fails. Why? Because it can't provide enough liquidity for every second of the day based upon value of transactions for the majority of the nations. Like, I mean, just look through this, okay? Just look through this. But understand that the XRPL, it's a quantum consciousness, and it might be best that we just think of this as artificial intelligence from 100 years in the future. The U.S. Treasury Department would buy back all the XRP, not the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was pulled under the U.S. Treasury Department in 2020. I think it was April or May. They've been reduced to a board. All they're there to do going forward is to help maintain compliance for the national sales tax of 14%. That's it. They can't make money. They can't print money. Matter of fact, they have to buy back all their old money. And they're going to be given 1 year to do it. And they could just be completely done away with and renamed. And how'd that happen? All the money, isn't it interesting? All the money was confiscated back from every single corrupt company under Executive Orders 13818 and 13848. Everything out of the Vatican. Everything out of Buckingham Palace. Switzerland. Jerusalem. Tunnels. And I've done videos and I've put out posts marking the tunnels that the Lord showed me. So they're going to buy back all the retail tokens. That includes the remaining tokens that were purchased and held by Ripple because they purchased those in the secondary market. They're going to get all the balance of the escrowed tokens. They're going to get all of the tokens that were clawed back from illegal purchases or nefarious people. So that's going to total approximately 100 billion, which were minted. Now, we're not going to get into the finite details of how many were burned, this and that. No, we can use these nice round numbers and we can go with that. But here's the key. No more tokens can ever be minted. Now it's critical. Then we have BRICS nations, all 206 nations that come into one accord to leave the corrupt Luciferian deep state cabal, Khazarian mafia, fractionalized fiat reserve banking system. And they've adopted the new quantum financial system, 100% gold asset-backed currency standard. So once EBS goes off, we go into our 10-day, 12-day lockdown. Every currency around the world will be at par, 1-to-1. So $1 in the US will be equal to $1 in Russia, Spain, anywhere else in the world that has a currency. Now, eventually, we won't need to be worried about the name because a dollar is a dollar. And that's the important thing to realize. See, and I had this discussion the other day. And the question was, well, what if somebody from the US wants to buy something in China? And China has this name for their dollar, and we have this name for our dollar. The answer is, it doesn't matter. Why? The QFS ledger system on the XRPL in the fifth dimension, it doesn't care what you want to call it. It knows the dollar's a dollar. So the ledger just moves the dollar from China, that person, and puts it as a dollar for that person in the United States. No big deal. But we had to get to the point where everything was on par. And that leads into the redemption of Zim bonds, the exchange of foreign currencies, dinar, dong, bolivar, etc. So I put this together, and it kind of gives you a visual of the BRICS nations. And again, they all signed the accord back in 2015. And we finally got public notice that 206 nations are all on the total for BRICS nations. So it's kind of like, I think it was like 157 one day and 159. It was 159 and it was 47 the next day. It's like, okay, 206. Wow, isn't it amazing? We got that. This is the picture I put together. And the XRPL has a dual purpose. It works in both the 3D and the 5D. So if you kind of think of this as the third dimension realm, the light blue, and the fifth dimension realm being the purpley blue, we see what happens in the fifth dimension after it goes through the gateway using XRP. It's boundless, it's limitless, it's the fifth dimension. Before it gets there, it's in the 3D world, it's bounded and it's limited. Here's Einstein's equation for the theory of relativity. Remember we talked about the big E? I forgot to change this. My slide that I originally did was the new E, and that came from a dream I had where if I was at the 6 o'clock position, Einstein was at the chalkboard at about 11 o'clock, and there were 3 gentlemen to my right, and I couldn't see him. And they're telling Einstein, we have to get rid of the E. We have to get rid of the E. And what was Clem Comet saying? The big E, the big E. Well, what's the big E? It's XRP. So God gave me a new equation to identify that we're no longer bound by the speed of light. So the moment the transaction was needed to be completed here, it's already completed in the fifth dimension. So there is no restriction, there's no governor like we have in the third dimension. So, hats off to operating the XRP on the XRPL in the third dimension and getting 1,500 transactions per second. It's like having a Ferrari in a mobile home park and you can't drive over 5 miles an hour first gear. What's your car worth? Next to nothing. But you take it out and you put it into an area where you can just let her loose. That's when its true purpose is discovered. And the price follows. So the E is now a function of X. X is XRP, the guarantor, the provider. And it takes the MC squared and it says to increase it by 4 times, because going from the third dimension to the fifth dimension or to quantum is a 4 times increase. And God said, and then just raise that to the power of infinity. So whatever it needs to be, it is. There's no limit. And I went, is that simple? He goes, I didn't make it complicated. I said, they couldn't figure it out because they weren't communicating with me. But I couldn't believe it when he shared that. And I think that's it. That's the end of our slide. Wow. Took a little longer than I thought, but you know, this is valuable information. And it couldn't be done in 30 minutes. It couldn't be done in 60 minutes. But this is what I know. You've got material here that you can go back and take a look at. This will give you the understanding you need to understand both what XRP, the planet purpose for it is, what the XRPL, how it functions in the third and the fifth dimensions, and where we're headed. So with that, I thank you. Have a wonderful Labor Day. God bless you, and we'll talk soon.